Blind Citizens Australia proudly presents the An Eye to the Future Job Ready Workshop Series. Welcome to today's workshop, Recruitment Services and Selection.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our job readiness workshop this morning. Appreciate you all being here. Just a quick taking of account, we've got myself, Tim Davey, Project Officer with the Eye to the Future team at Blind Citizens Australia. Joining us as well from Blind Citizens Australia is Deb Deshays, General Manager. We've also got our guest speakers, as you know, Matt Gowan from Hays Recruitment and Victoria Hunt from SBS. So thank you two for joining us. And it looks like we've got Adam, Daniel, Angela, Erica, Cameron, Gary, and a few unknown iPhones. Susan as well, thanks for joining us, everyone. So we'll start off with an acknowledgement to country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're all meeting today. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia. As we gather for this physically dispersed meeting, let us take a moment to reflect upon the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognise the various traditional lands in which we gather today. All right, so without further ado, I'll pass over to Deb Deshays, who will do a bit of an introduction to an Eye to the Future project and lead us into our first speaker. So thanks all, and over to you, Deb.
Thank you, Tim, and welcome everyone, and particular thanks already to Matt and Victoria for joining us today. I also see there's a couple of other colleagues from Blind Citizens Australia, Angela and Erica, so welcome. And Eye to the Future is a project initiative run by Blind Citizens Australia and funded through the Department of Social Services. And the purpose of the initiative is to support our members who are blind or have a vision impairment into paid employment. So our team work very hard with connecting with and networking with any potential recruiters and organisations to be able to really promote and support the fact that anyone who has a vision impairment is very capable of being employed in a role. And our team support with the recruitment process and also assist along the way if there's any particular queries that arise around accessibility, access to information or access to a job site, and stay connected with the employee and the employer throughout the journey just to see if there's anything in particular that our team can continue to support with. Today, our presenters will be focusing around the topic of recruitment for job seekers. And if you do need any help, if you're currently not registered as a member with Blind Citizens Australia or with our project An Eye to the Future, please don't hesitate to reach out to the team of Maddie, Tim, Christina or myself. I now have the pleasure of introducing our first presenter, which is Victoria Hunt. She's a manager at Access Services and Program Preparation. I'm reading your title, make sure the Program Preparation Unit at the Special Broadcast Services SBS. And they have just finished recruiting for 5 new roles, new positions, which were advertised with our members through a recent member update. And she'd just like to share some of those details with us in regards to the actual selection process. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody, and thanks, BCA, for having me here today. I'm dialing into the meeting today from Artarmon, so Gamaragal country, and I would just like to acknowledge elders past and present and their ongoing connection to and custodianship of this land. Let me just get back to, so the Access Services Unit. So our role at SBS is we either produce or we commission closed captions, subtitles, and audio description for SBS programming, and we look after subtitles in both directions. So obviously subtitles that are in programs that are made in other languages, we subtitle into English, and then we also subtitle a lot of our English language programs into a range of other languages. So that's basically what we do, while making sure that, you know, the quality remains high across the board. So because I'm speaking today about our very specific recruitment of people who are blind or people who have low vision into a range of contractor roles that have to do with our audio description service, I'm just going to do a quick self-description. I've got dark brown wavy hair to just past my shoulders, mostly my own, but the greys that are in there have been touched up. I have brown eyes. I have distinctive dark eyebrows. I'm wearing silver framed glasses, and I've got on a pale blue top. So onto the first sort of topic I'm discussing, which is just the background of audio description on SBS. I know a lot of you will know this already, but just 3 or 4 points about it, just to make sure it's covered. So there's a government mandate for the ABC and SBS to produce 14 hours of new audio description every week. For the past year, SBS has been producing 28 hours of new audio description every week. So we're at double that mandate. And at the moment, we're only on our linear channels. We audio describe on SBS main channel, Viceland, World Movies and NITV. That's where we choose our programming from. We're shortly to launch on demand, which is obviously fantastic because then people don't have to log into a schedule in order to have audio description service on their programs. The soft launch for that is sort of happening at the end of this month. And then we're hoping to launch properly on demand. So soft launch is just testing, really. We put up a few things, we try and test them and see if it all works. And then proper launch will be, we hope, around the end of June. I can't promise that because it depends on what technical issues we come up against, but that's the aim, is that we'll actually have that service up and running from the end of June. So most of our audio description is produced by a vendor that we work with called Red Bee Media. They're a global company. They're based in the UK. They've got an office here in Australia. I think they've got a team of about 9 audio describers here now, because obviously one of our criteria was that we wanted as much as possible of our audio description to have recognisably Australian accents. We didn't want all English accents on everything. So when we commission them to produce AD for us, that largely happens here. Sometimes we still end up with English accents because if they have an existing file, like so for example, they've already audio described something for one of their other clients like the BBC or Channel 4, then it's much cheaper for us to buy that file that already exists, and that frees up money to do more audio description. So, so we will go with that file if it's pre-existing, but largely it's new and they write it and record with Australian accents. So that's who Red Bee Media is, global company that produces. Now that they do most of our AD, but not all of it. So in-house, we have one audio description producer, and we try and look at all of our SBS commissioned programming, either commissioned by SBS or by NITV, and we look at all that programming and we try and audio describe that in-house. That's our aim. Sometimes we don't have the resources to do every single program, but that's the aim. We try and do that because a lot of our SBS commission staff has subtitles, of course, it's SBS. And that creates obviously, that sort of straightforward workflow where you write an AD script and then you have one AD narrator through the entire program. If there's a lot of subtitles, what we try and do is introduce additional voices for the subtitles. So that's not part of that straightforward Red Bee workflow, but it's something that we like to do for our SBS commission programming. So we try and do that in-house. So the roles that we recruited for are contractor roles, and they're to work with SBS in-house, not to work with Red Bee Media. Does anyone have any questions on that bit? No? Cool. Okay, so I'll just go now to what the roles were and how we recruited. So the 3 roles were and a quality checking role for audio description scripts. We had 2 contractor roles planned for this, but we got some really good applicants, and so we actually expanded that to 3. We're not aiming to quality check every AD script produced by SBS or by our vendor. There's just too many, and it would take too long. But now we've obviously got people in place that can spot check a range of scripts that are produced. Those 2 roles, the plan is that they'll work remotely. They don't need to be people that attend an office space. Then we had 2 roles for narrators. People who can get in the voice booth and narrate audio description for us. We wanted 1 male and 1 female voice. We try and keep gender parity on that, internally. So obviously that would extend to these roles. And then once trained, those new narrators' voices, they'd be added to our narration show reel. And what we do is we send that show reel to the creators or the producers of the program, and they make a decision on which voice they want, which voice they think suits their program. Those roles the people that fill those roles need to come into the Artarmon building, basically because recorded voices need to be very clean. It can't be on your iPhone. There needs to be a very, very clean recording. So people need to come into the office where we've got a voiceover booth and all the associated hardware and software. And then the final role is for a scriptwriter. And so the training for this one will be pretty intensive and intense. But once again, it's work that can be carried out remotely. And we would be looking to commission about 3 scripts a year from the successful applicant in that role. So this is how we went about recruiting. So the whole point of our recruitment was to involve and employ end users in the production of this service. Our vendor, Red Bee, they've had many, many, many years of producing audio description, and they've got a great track record of consultation generally. At SBS, we've been really committed to securing the best training that we can for our people that produce AD internally. And there's a lot of literature and debate and groups and chats about AD, but none of it is the same as having someone who actually uses the service, contributing to that service, feeding back on that service, and involved in producing that service. So because our aim was to employ people who are blind or who have low vision into each of the roles we described, we went with a very targeted approach, and we invited applications in the first instance via existing BCA communications. And our plan was that if we didn't receive sufficient applicants from that first call out, that we would look further afield, but it didn't come to that. We received, 16 individual applicants applied for roles, and most of them applied for more than 1 role. We had applications from New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland and South Australia. And the way that we went about it was we sent out test materials. We sent test materials out twice because the original set of test materials we sent out were not fit for purpose. Our learning out of that was don't send PDFs, and because it's really patchy on whether they'll be able to be read or not. And also don't send out the original screenplay because that just muddies the waters about what's getting described and what we want described, because a screenplay obviously describes a range of things around the diegesis, as does audio description, I guess. So that was just confusing to people. So they were our learnings out of what not to send out for test materials. But overall, once we revised and sent a second set of materials out, and once we extended the deadline for people who were attempting to do a script test, the test materials for scripting, once we did that, we sort of felt that we'd come to a place where the test materials were pretty successful in helping us work out what people's sort of aptitude and experience were, not just compared with the other people that applied, but, just more generally, but whether people had an aptitude or not. When the test materials came back, we had a kind of panel of 3 assessing. We had Fran Mathy, who's our key trainer, and we had our in-house AD producer, Mike Howlett, and myself. So the actual test materials we sent for the quality checking roles, we sent out an AD script for an episode of a program called Appetite, which we had already described, which used multiple voices. And we sent out our AD script for Blue Velvet, which if people are familiar with that movie, it's sort of quite a confronting, it's a cult classic, it's quite kind of confronting. And we did send out quite a confronting scene with our dialogue with our AD script. And the scene that we sent out had very little dialogue. So there was a lot of audio description. And what we were looking for was feedback from people that improved the scripts for the intended audience, feedback that was really targeted and concise, and feedback that demonstrated an understanding of the limitations of AD around existing dialogue. So that's what we were looking for there. For the narration, this one's a bit more obvious. We sent out 2 5-minute video clips with audio, one for a drama, Iggy and Ace, which was one of our productions, and one for Kids Raising Kids, which is a documentary. And we basically just asked people to record just into their phone, send us the recording. And, you know, what we're always looking for with voice is, in a way, it's a kind of a clean voice. So, for example, it can't kind of have any quavers or wavers in it. It couldn't be, for example, very, very soft. It couldn't maybe, for example, have a sibilant S. All those things are they're so magnified and distracting once they're recorded and they're sitting on a soundtrack. So I guess we're looking for a voice that was very kind of clean, that didn't have any distractions in it, but also really importantly, a voice that is able to convey a level of warmth or humour where appropriate. It's not necessarily, you know, full-blown actly emotion, but certainly we want a voice that is not, you know, kind of monotone or robotic, and is able to really convey shades of emotion. So that's what we were looking for there. Then for the script writing role, we sent the first 15 minutes of a piece called The Pianist. And this is where things went wrong with where we sent out the screenplay, because we thought that that would assist the people doing it to identify characters and action, but it was actually unhelpful in every way. Not able to be easily read, and also it had too much information that got in the way of people actually writing their own audio description script. So as I said, we kind of revised and had another look at it. And what we were looking for here was a script that sort of demonstrated an understanding of audio description's main goals, a script that was creative and yet still focused and concise, and a script that demonstrated an understanding of the limitations of time, because time is your enemy when you're doing audio description. So that's what we were looking for. Does anyone have any questions about any of the selection process at all?
Just a quick one, if I can.
Yeah, of course.
The people who, and sorry, this might be a bit of a given, but the people who were the script writers, were they people with low vision? In other words, were they people who could watch the script, the action unfolding and then describe it, or?
So we didn't ask people what their kind of level of vision was. So I can't answer that exactly, but I know that people got varying degrees of assistance, and that's why we extended out the time frame for things to be returned to us, so that people could basically work with someone else to describe the scene for them, so that they could then write the script, which is actually how we imagine the actual process will work.
Yeah, I was just interested in that, not wanting to foreclose the opportunity of a blind person being writing an audio description script, but I'd never thought of that as being something which would be an option. But in many ways, I can see how if you've got a team of people working together, you can get the best of both. Yeah,
that's it. So how we're imagining it will work, Cameron, is that our audio description producer, Mike, would basically share a screen, because obviously audio is involved as well, share a screen, describe the visuals of what's happening, and then take the script, take what the person they're working with wants to put in as script, and then the two of them would work out timing together and make sure it fitted.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, so that's our plan for how that will work.
Wonderful.
Obviously, saying that, people will have different ways that they want to work, and as you say, it might depend on what their level of vision is, and so Mike and whoever that person is will sort out the nitty-gritty, but that's basically how we're imagining it will work.
No, thank you. And just quickly, I know this isn't about your AD service, but so thrilled of the work you and the ABC are doing in that space. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're really thrilled about it as well. We've got all sorts of really interesting things that we're trying to do. Now, I know now's not the time and place, but we're trying to do some more bespoke, more kind of different approaches to AD that aren't just the normal straightforward ones for particular programming.
Awesome.
But anyway, I'll sort of see if I can touch on that in a second. But yeah,
Absolutely.
That's what we're sort of thinking.
Thank you.
Not at all. So I'm right at the end, just in case people were thinking this is going to go on forever. So where we are now is we've been in touch with all our successful applicants, but we're still working with a couple of people on mandatory requirements around things like ABN, suitable bank account availability. But we have been in touch with everyone and we're just finalising things. And in fact, the QC training's already started for 2 of the 3 successful applicants in that role. The other person wasn't available and we'll schedule something a bit later. And as I said, working methods, it's a bit of a work in progress, and we'll just need to chat with individual people about, we've got an idea of how it might work, but we'll obviously sort that out with people individually. Now, just in terms of funding, so these employment initiatives were obviously approved for this financial year, but I've got the same funding approved for next year, so the next financial year. So we're going to be looking again, not straight away in July, because we've really got to get people trained in this tranche, but certainly well before the end of the calendar year, we'll be coming out again with an offer on some more roles and training, same roles and training. So that's for the next financial year. And then I'm currently working to see if I can get the funding extended further out. So we've certainly got it for this financial year, next financial year, and then hopefully. And when I say that, that's really around the training. Once people are trained, they'll actually, still, the funding won't run out for people to produce a script or for people to come in and narrate or for people to QC. I'm saying we won't necessarily have the big block of funding for training in other years, but we've certainly got it next financial year. So I think that's it really. If there's any other questions, I'm really happy to take them. No? Or I'm happy for anyone to get in touch if they want to know anything else about it. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again. We know you've got to shoot off.
That's it. Thank you.
But yeah, obviously, like we said, the session's being recorded. So if you wanted to revisit the remainder, then yeah, we'd welcome you to.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Victoria.
Okay, and just leading on from that, just a quick note to remember that if you're interested in applying for a role at SBS or any other organisation, that Eye to the Future with Blind Citizens Australia is here to support you. So we really encourage you to, if you see those kind of roles, to get in touch with us, and we can certainly support you with your application and getting that process moving. Okay, I think now we're just about on time, but yeah, I'd like to pass over to Matt Gowan, who's joining us from Hays Recruitment Agency, to talk to you about what Hays are doing with their accessible recruiting practices and how they can work for you. So thanks, Matt. I'll pass over to you, and you can introduce yourself and a bit about your background, and yeah, launch into your preso. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Good morning, everyone. Great to have so many people on the call. I really appreciate it. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land I'm presenting from today, which is Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people, otherwise known as Melbourne. We've got some iconic Aboriginal people that have been from these two nations, and I'd like to extend my respect to those past elders as well as those present and emerging. Thanks for looking after the land that we're on up until now. So today I'm going to talk. I know this recruitment is a popular subject for people with disability in particular, because of course it can make such a massive difference to life if you can find your way into employment, if that's what you're seeking. So I know there's going to be some questions. I'll try to get through some of the points I'm going to share today, relatively quickly, and then have a time to engage with you as much as we can before 11. So my role with Hays, which is a global recruitment firm, I've been with Hays since '99, so quite an old veteran. And you can tell if you can see me on screen, fair bit of grey hair there. I stopped touching mine up a long time ago. I look a bit like a flight attendant, or maybe a pilot today. I've got the headset on and a white shirt on and a pretty plain background. I've got glasses on, which reveal my age, but look, my mum and my girlfriend and various others people tell me I look a lot younger than the middle age, which I apparently have. So started with Hays ages ago, 25 years ago or so, and during during my time there, about half of that time has been as a recruitment consultant on the tools or managing recruitment consultant teams. And then really for the last half, I've been involved in the division of Hays, which is called Enterprise. That really means that I engage with our larger customers, employers, and kind of manage those relationships with those employers. So I'm in quite a privileged position that I work strategically with some of the leading kind of points of contact at those larger employers. During the session today, there's no slides, it's just a conversation. I'm going to refer to what I think are some viable pathways through employment for you. I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on the work that we've done with larger employers, only because they tend to have a little bit more options to repeat processes and get some learns that we can then deploy and kind of repeat and do better and improve. But look, Hays works with lots of other smaller employers. If big employers are not your bag, then there are probably options for small to medium as well. So we can perhaps touch on that if you need to. Due to the scale of Hays, though, we work with big government employers, federal, state, as well as local. We work with a lot of the big banks who do use agencies quite a lot. And then there's other interesting markets like the defence industry, the technology as well as engineering side of that, manufacturing, resources and mining companies, literally pretty much any industry that you can think of, we've probably got a little bit of a hand in at some point, which is great. So being a partner to some of those companies means that we don't just kind of put bums on seats for them. We've really got to work with them closely to overcome, their employment challenges or their people-based challenges, and that includes diversity and inclusion. And in particular note, I think many of the employers we work with are really interested in improving the way that they can be more inclusive of people with disability, whatever, across the different spectrum of disability. And I guess in that, my role and seeing that many years ago led me to be one of the people that set up our ED&I committee, or a Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee at Hays. That was in 2016. So I've been a leading kind of member of that group for several years now, and I chaired that committee for the last 3 years. So luckily for me, that's enabled me to be more heavily involved in some of the inclusion projects that we've had underway. And look, I'm going to put a big asterisk next to all of that, because I'm not here to spruik Hays per se today. There's a lot of other employers who do a better job than we do. There's others that don't do nearly as much as we do. We're in the middle, I think. We're trying hard to be more inclusive and better. And we've learned some good things along the way. We've had some good successes, so I'll try and share some of those with you today. But I think persistence is the key to this, and never giving up. And we it's an ongoing journey. So I'll probably touch on some of that as well. Any questions before I go on? Great.
Thanks, Matt. You mentioned the committee there, the inclusion committee. Are there any highlights you can touch on quickly that might have come out of that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so what we've been able to look at, it's interesting being a recruitment company because, of course, we work with many employers, and so our kind of natural instinct, and I certainly know this for myself from being on the tools and filling hundreds of jobs over the years, that my first thought is to the external market and how I can attract candidates and find candidates in different backgrounds for employers, and that's certainly what the committee probably started focusing on initially. But to be fair, we probably learned as well sometime into that process that we've got some work to do to be more inclusive of our own 1,500 or so staff, and to be build better structures to attract and retain and help people to succeed within our own organisation. So I guess the committee over the years has formed sort of two streams, if you like. One is that internal and attraction and retention for our own people, and understanding what support our own people need. And then there's been an eye to the market and working with employers, who ultimately are our clients, I guess, to meet some of their goals, their challenges and goals in relation to ED&I. What have been our biggest achievements? Look, I'm going to talk about disability confident recruiter today, because that's been a long-term project that I've been heavily involved in. For those of you that are not familiar with that set of guidelines, it's a set of guidelines outlined by the Australian Network on Disability, and it helps employers and recruitment companies, because it's for both, to build frameworks and structures that can be set out and set in stone so that they become business as usual, and to enable people with different backgrounds and disabilities to be able to access the recruitment process. So we've been working on that for a period of time. I'm pleased to say that even though it takes much longer than I wish it had taken, it's been a 4-year process probably from an initial concept to even now, and it's ongoing. But we've made some massive headways. A lot of it's geared to the launch of our new website a bit later this year, which is a global website that's tying us back a little bit. But once that's, because it's got the right accessibility standards, once that's good to go in November, we should be very close to having a full process. So it's a kind of achievement. It's a 3/4 achievement, but I'm pinning a lot of success on that because it's come a long way. In addition to that, we've had a number of really interesting employee resource groups that we've put together to help recognise and help people with disability that work for Hays to talk about their backgrounds if they want to be more open and transparent about what their needs might be. I think it's helped us to become a much more flexible employer. So that's been great. And there's been a couple of other achievements in other pillars of diversity as well, which maybe I could talk about on another day.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. So assuming that sort of transformation project is looking at, things like who you hire internally, as well as, helping your employers or your clients with meeting their requirements in terms of accessible recruiting. Yeah.
So look, there's 3 things that we've really tried to focus on really in that. Firstly, we've continued to develop this, is partnering with key enterprise clients because that's a really good, and we're going to talk about that as a bit of a hack, perhaps towards the end of the session. Working with some of these big employers means that we can have Hays and, let's say NAB, or name one, Hays and NAB can sit down in a room and say, right, what are we doing in disability inclusion space? Let's work on a particular project, a bit like SBS have done, I suppose, and let's identify something and build a process to be more inclusive for that distinct piece of work, as well as perhaps their overall goals. So we've done a lot to help customers be a bit more even exploratory about what they want to try and achieve, and then go out to the market to see what we can do in terms of resourcing. So that's been really interesting, and that's ongoing. I think in terms of building consultant confidence in disability in the recruitment process is really important too, because I can guarantee that we've got 1,000 recruitment consultants in this company. They all want to help as many people as they can to get jobs, but are they all confident to deal with every possibility in terms of different backgrounds? No, they're not. So we have to overcome that. So we built various things so far, and there's more to come. We do have a 3-part disability confident training program for all of our staff, which they can access. We also have compulsory anti-discrimination and inclusion training for everybody. We also work through unconscious bias training so that we can help people identify when they're accidentally being discriminatory, which does happen because people don't realise. So there's some good programs in place there that are all already underway. And look, the last sort of piece is the system side of things, is our website, our job boards. Are they accessible? Are they, can you use screen technology, adaptive technology with them? If so, what happens next? So we're doing some things around the global website already mentioned, but also where do we record if someone needs an adjustment or some assistance during the recruitment process? How do we access that? What are our formats that we use for the application and assessment process, and other alternatives, and how do we get alternatives to people easily? So that's the kind of other big piece of work. We're making some progress. A lot of these things are sitting ready to get switched on when the website goes. But yeah, there's a lot, as you can imagine, there's a lot to kind of think of in the background so that we can kind of unpick the standard recruitment process that isn't completely inclusive, and make sure that just by inserting some considerations along the way, suddenly you open up the range of options for people. I'm going to talk about, I'm conscious of time, so I'll see if I can motor through these next things, where we're going to talk about some success that Hays has had a little bit in the past with vision impairment specifically, and I'm lucky enough to have had some oversight to this. And then I think we'll go back and we'll just give some general advice, because I'd be happy to do that as well. So another organisation that Hays has worked with in the past is Vision Australia, and specifically we partnered with Vision Australia a few times actually, when there's been a cohort of candidates who have been, and it does come down to the right staff as well, I think, some support people who are really keen to work proactively with Hays to profile those job seekers. So we've tried two different things. One was more successful than the other. The one that was perhaps the initial approach that we took was only based in Victoria at the time, so that's a fault straight away because it's not a national. But the local effort was that we brought some candidates into our boardroom to meet with some of the Hays consultants. It wasn't looking at specific jobs at all. We just had a meet and greet session. Some of the Hays consultants that were keen to just help more generally with recruitment for people that from Vision Australia met them, and we just kind of had a bit of a get to know you, and then consultants went away to try and talk to some of their employers proactively rather than in response to job ads about opportunities that might suit the backgrounds of those individuals. We had some success, and we placed, I think, 3 out of 6 on that initial intake into jobs. That involved really the consultants representing those job seekers to employers with and talking through what opportunities there might be for them. I guess the trick there is for us to approach employers who we know are inclusive, who we know are going to be either already have a good inclusive process in place, or who are prepared to modify in an appropriate way so that they can be more inclusive. But most recruitment consultants will have knowledge of, certainly once they've got some experience anyway, will have some knowledge of who the best employers are to speak to that are going to get the best results. So that was the problem with that approach, was that it was a bit of a once-off, and then to repeat that and duplicate it, you've almost got to schedule something regularly, get the same people involved, and learning from the experience was a little bit harder. But it wasn't a terrible idea. I thought it was quite good, and it worked. I think it's probably, we've had one other session that's been similar since. Where we've had better success is where we partnered with an employer. In this case, it was ANZ Bank. Great thing about ANZ at the time is that they had a disability support manager who had vision impairment as well, and so he was very conscious of this cohort of people, and had really good workplace support. But beyond that, it wasn't just about him. There was contact centre roles, and the key was that Hays worked with ANZ Bank on a fairly regular basis. We still do, to have an intake of people, perhaps let's call it every 6 weeks. So all we really needed to do was work with the the hiring managers who were part of the ANZ end of that process to say, look, some of our candidates might have vision impairment. We need to make sure that the process can be inclusive of those individuals as well. And so we were able to kind of unpack the standard process that they had in place. So really good, actually. It took it really easily, and then work out ways to just modify it, really. And so in other words, if there was a tool that they were using for the assessment that was visual based, why can't we make it descriptive based, or why couldn't we make it audio based, or both? If there was what's the housekeeping rules at the beginning of the meeting, let's make sure that we can open up those descriptive parts of the meeting at the beginning of the assessment so that people know the rules to introduce themselves when they speak, etc., not talk over each other, and so on. So just some simple changes actually made the process much easier for people to access. And we were able to partner with ANZ to place, I think, in every intake over a period of a year, we might have had some candidates in the mix that had vision impairment. Some were successful, some were not. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Because then it comes down to not whether you got a vision impairment or not. It just comes down to how you perform in the meeting, in the assessment in relation to the other tasks and tools that were required. So that was really good. That has, sort of a disclaimer here, I guess. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years during COVID, Hays has had quite a bit of turnover of our staff. It's been difficult to retain. We've lost some of our really good recruiters, say for the ANZ Bank in particular. So in particular, that campaign is more infrequent now. But having said that, I think we're back on a really good track. We've got a different team in place with that bank. So, it's quite possible that could be something we could pick up again. But, I think the moral of that story is that anything is actually possible if we put a little bit of groundwork in with a particular employer. I think that makes a difference. And I think just to move on to the last point for the day, that's the hack really that I would advise you. It is, if you could use Hays's experience and scale, it would be to partner with us to target particular employers that we know want to do better in this space, that we know want to be more inclusive, and we can probably build something that will be specific to their needs that we could repeat. So Hays, one of Hays' divisions, we do on-site recruitment services for some employers. So we're actually on-site with Toyota, we're on-site with NAB, we're on-site with, we've got a dedicated team for BHP, for example, and there's about 20 customers or something like that around the country. So that gives us a really unique opportunity to be able to sit down with their talent people or their recruitment people and say, listen, we've got an idea. We know that you want to be more inclusive. Let's form that idea out into a situation where we can assess people's skill levels and versus the jobs that you've got at the moment, and make some headway with people with different backgrounds based on the different types of abilities. So I'm just going to pause there because I might have gone off a few tangents. See if you've got any questions, Sally.
So, thanks, Matt. I just want to say really well done. I've been working for 14 years until just recently. With the change of the government, I lost my job. But how wonderful to see what is now available compared to then, which was almost like you were a rare thing. And it was always quite uncomfortable. So well done, and thank you for making it more mainstream and commonplace. I know it still has difficulties, and I'm sure there's still hurdles, but what a difference in that 15 years. Fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I totally agree. It's so good to hear what you guys are doing, Matt. And
thanks, Cameron.
It's really exciting. I remember when I started, without boring everyone to tears, but I had very little luck with recruiters when I was trying to get my first jobs about 20 years ago. When I went for a more senior job about 10 years ago, I did try recruiters and I had more luck, and it went a lot better. But it looks like you're looking at the employment journey at all ends. The only bit that we haven't really heard about is sort of the more senior end, but that's fine, because in the end, like in some ways, the end that needs a bit more fixing up is the entry level end, and you're doing some great work to do that. And like Sally said, just really want to applaud you. It's so good to see a recruiter proactively working in this space. It's absolutely awesome. I'm thrilled to have been a part of the presentation.
Oh, thanks, Cameron. Thank you. I might just touch on some hints, because I know the job applications can be frustrating, and I haven't got a solution for that, but I've got some potential ideas, I guess. The role of a recruitment consultant, I personally, as you know, I've been here 25 years, so I know the difference. It's become significantly harder with online job boards, because the number of applications that one gets to any job ad, if you're advertising, is extraordinary. So, and of course, not everyone that applies for the job ad is even remotely suitable. So you've got to work through sometimes hundreds, sometimes even thousands of applications. And you know, the idea of automation isn't great for that either, because that's quite flawed and fraught with other problems. So it's a time game. And the average recruitment consultant will probably struggle to get through all of the applications, or to give them all the same level of attention and discretion. So that's a difficult challenge. It doesn't matter what your background is, whether you have a disability or not disability or anything. It's very, very difficult to get in front of a recruitment consultant and make, pitch your case. So I'm going to talk about some other options, but if you're going to go down the path of applying for job ads, of course you should do, because at least you know that those are live opportunities available right now. So it's a good thing to go after. But like any job seeker, you have to be super, super persistent. You've got to probably apply for more jobs than you care to. You probably need to get on the phone and harass. When I say harass, I mean just try and get in front of and get some phone time with someone to pitch your case, whether that's an employer or a recruiter. So that's a bit thankless, and I can understand why people get frustrated by that. It's probably got nothing to do with whether you have a disability or not, because unless you're disclosing on your advert, people don't even know anyway. It's just the fact that the volumes are extraordinary. So, you know, that's until that changes, until there's a bit more specific, I don't even know how that's going to change, to be honest. It's probably only going to get harder from a job ad perspective. But I think what can change is when you've got employers and agents in particular who have got the right processes in place, and you've got a shortcut line straight to whether it's a disability target or it's an inclusivity improvement process. Let's do that, because I know if I rang Thales, the defense company right now, who are massive in Australia, and I said to them, I've got some people with this background, I happen to have some of them might need some adjustments during a recruitment process. So let's just make sure that we can flatten the line there, make sure that it's more inclusive. Are you okay to do that? They might say, oh, okay, they would say yes, but let's just work out what we need to do. Once we've done that, they will be ready to and keen to want to explore it. If we don't do that, sometimes employers go around in circles wondering what to do next. They want to do something, but they just don't know what to do next. And it just can sometimes take a BCA and a Hays and a NAB to sit down in a room and go, let's try this and see what happens. And that will be my recommendation to Tim after this, that we try to work out some pathways where we can do that. And I know that I've already had some feedback from our account management team in the last week since I caught up with Tim, who have given me 5 employers straight away off the bat that they know will want to hear more about this after today's session. A few of them are in financial services, to be fair. So if that's not your thing, we might need to look outside of that, but there are a couple outside as well.
That's fantastic, Matt. Yeah, obviously, our members know that we've got our Eye to the Future program, which helps them with their applications, and obviously helps support them and guide them through that process. But I guess maybe the next step is actually, which can be hard, is actually finding the job and finding someone who's going to be open to the idea of hiring someone with a vision. So I guess, yeah, with all of our noggins combined, we can potentially come up with something good here. Yeah, it's great to hear all that work that you guys are doing in that space.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I know we've hit time. I meant to be much quicker than that, but
yeah. Thanks again, Matt. That was really helpful. It sounds like everyone else thought so as well. So appreciate your time today, and yeah, we'll certainly we'll catch up after this and yeah, put our heads together and see what we come up with. Right, well, that just about does it. Thanks everyone in general for coming along. Yeah, certainly if you have any other questions as well, yeah, get in touch with us, and yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
Awesome session.
Thanks, Tim. Cheers.
You've been listening to the An Eye to the Future Job Ready workshop on recruitment services and selection. Brought to you by Blind Citizens Australia, informing, connecting and empowering Australians who are blind or vision impaired.